So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to RMIT. It's the second time we organize an event with RMIT. This one sets in the middle of the Vietnamese Festival for Creativity and Design. And yeah, we are very thankful for them welcoming us for that event. We have called that event Saigon Talk number 2, actually. And maybe I just want to give you a few words about what are the Saigon Talk in our minds. We started actually the project Hanoi Talk because our main office is still based in Hanoi. And we started this in like 3 or 4 years ago, having the idea to share some experience with other disciplines. So we invited once per month a designer, landscaper, historian, even musician, artist. But in the idea to share these experiences with our own people in the office. And little by little, we democratize a bit all this. We open the doors to other people. And since we have an office in Saigon, last year we introduced the first Saigon Talk, and this year we have the second Saigon Talk. We didn't have the chance to organize many of these because of the COVID-19, obviously. So that's why I'm really happy to have that event today. Hopefully there will be a bit more people coming later, but that's going to be no doubt. This event, we try to find some theme that we would like really to dig a bit further. It's always the idea is to try to learn something new. And so we were questioning about what is a green design. And so we called it From Soil to City, with the idea to experiment different scales. So we will have the implementation from Pedro Pedalino, who is more a landscape architect. And then we go even to the end with San, who is a doctor in talking about really the global urbanization, more about master planning. And in between scale, with Mang architects from Mia Design Studio, and from Hien, who works for a developer called Easyland. Just a few words about, I mean, when we talk about green design, it's always, there is a trend nowadays to speak about green design. It's cool, you have to create a nice image. But this is something we have been questioning in our own office in G8A. And it's what is behind green. And I'm sure you all have answers for this. I'm sure there is something a bit more deep that you can use for a better sustainability and I don't know, maybe maybe it's a current that is coming nowadays. I was speaking with my partner Manuel in Singapore. We used to have the modernist, the brutalist, and maybe today we have the greenist. So I'm waiting to see a bit through your own speech what I will discover and how you use that green notion. And so the first lecturer, Pedro, I'm really happy to welcome you here. We've known each other for quite a long time. And actually, we even worked together a long time ago in 2012 when you arrived to Brazil. After you arrived actually as an architect, but you changed a bit your career and developed more your sensibility for landscape. I know your father is also a landscape architect, and this is something you probably had in your guts for a long time. And yeah, I'm waiting to see how you are. I mean, I know already a bit of your work, but I'm ready to see also what is the speech. I'm curious to understand how you make the link architecture and landscape, since you have these two notions with you. So, please.
Good afternoon. Thanks RMIT and also Group 8 for inviting me here and all the organizers of this event. For those who know me, I'm Pedro. I'm a Brazilian landscape architect. My family is also from designers generally. My mother is a graphic designer. My father is a landscape architect as well. Although the field of my father was a bit different.
So I pretty much grew up in an environment that we have to deal with design and environment at the same time. In 2012, I had to, in May, I think 20th of May, I was invited to come to Vietnam by an invitation by Group 8. And to be honest, I know the extension of the travel, and I know the number of flights that I have to go, but I didn't know the extension of the change that this will bring to my life. I remember arriving in Hanoi and seeing those clouds, because Hanoi is very cloudy. As you know, I remember getting out of the airplane, crossing to the roads and arriving in the house of Manuel, that is one of the founders of Group 8, and after meeting also Gregoire, and I was really impressed by their work, but I know that inside me the questions was a little bit different, and after working a bit in Group 8, I returned to Brazil, and 1 year later, I decided to focus in what was my passion, that was landscape architecture. That is what we are focused now. When I say landscape architecture, I say everything related to stereo spaces. Like we are speaking about different kinds of scales that are involved in outdoor space. So we're speaking different ranges, including trees, all the kind of stereo spaces that I'll show you. So this is my studio. I have also my partner here of this company, as Daniel, that I have met in Ho Chi Minh. And our studio is also a kind of diverse studio with, we have different backgrounds, but all focus like to development of exterior spaces and landscape design. But before speaking about landscape design, I want to speak to two fundamental topics that I cannot speak. I cannot let it go before coming. The first, obviously, is the COVID. And I think my topic about COVID is not exactly related to the sickness itself. It's what will change in our life in terms of design. There's three main factors and three different factors that can speed the time of is like wars, revolutions, and epidemics. These three factors, they can speed up historical changes in our society. And the COVID is an epidemic that will change the way we relate to our society, essentially. So I'm sure that if before, like a few months ago, we were speaking, maybe we do online presentation, and everyone have a lot of concerns about it. Now everyone wants to do online presentations. And fortunately here in Vietnam, we have a little bit different approach, and the government was able to deal very well. And we have very short terms of lockdown, but I had 1 month at least. And I'm sure when we were inside the apartments, although we have changed to this virtual world, we have made some thoughts related to the space that is around us, the air that we breathe, the quality of the spaces that are around us. And this is essential to understand. People will demand more and more spaces that are up to their demands. You know, they will need public spaces. They will need to be in spaces that are comfortable, that are outside our house, and even in order to relate to our society. So for example, if before we need to spend a little bit more time with our family, I think after 1 month living with your family so close in a lockdown, you will reconsider that. You know, you'll see that the person that was very close to you, maybe you didn't want so much because our relation changed. So we have to reconsider the way we do. And the second factor that I want to speak is now, obviously we have floodings in the central region of Vietnam. So, and I know that the word in Vietnamese, even for country, is water as well. So, and I was reading that, for example, you used to have like 6 typhoons a year. This year we already had like 13. So if you think on landscaping this wider picture that I'll show later on, we'll need to consider how to deal with these natural elements that for me are essential to understanding the space. So to start and have this consideration about what is this wider environment, I want you to think about, when you say about desert, probably you're thinking about the Sahara, but the biggest desert in the world actually is the Antarctic desert, have like 14 million square miles of desert. And I want you to look to this image and see landscape or like our environment itself as something that is neutral. The ecosystem is there, and all this, the air, the conditions of climate, we're gonna need to face. We are responsible for part of it, but we're gonna need to face. So this is part of the environment. And on the absences of life, I want to change to this environment that we are here. I'm from Brazil, and I have, although people sometimes think I'm European, I'm from I just saw snow when I was like 20-something. And in Brazil, as Vietnam, we have this climate that is composed by high humidity and hot temperatures that generates consequently this explosion of life. So we have a lot of life around us. We have a lot of, and we have to be able to deal with this. And I want to make a parallel. Also, this is in Brazil, how we had to live before. So it's not that everyone had to live. This is the Yanomamis in the north of Brazil. It's not that everyone had to deal with this situation, but on the beginning, the nature was around us, and we were like kind of guests of this nature. We were guests of the environment that we were in. And we have to deal and understand all these aspects of this environment. For example, if you go to Yanomami, that is this ethnicity described in Brazil, if you say, like, this is green, the Yanomamis, and if you look back to this, if you look to this image and you focus a little bit, you're going to see that green have many shapes. And the Yanomamis, they have to deal with that. So, for example, you have 80. If you say green, they don't even understand because everything is green around them. So you have almost 80 names of green in order to identify the environment that they are. So they were guests of this environment. And from this, this is an extreme relation, from this event space that we have, that we were surrounded, we became, in a few points, like the nature became our guest somehow. You know, we have to, the cities, they were, especially if you are living in a country that is running to a fast process of development like Brazil and Vietnam. Brazil a little bit before, and now Vietnam. The cities, they have a process of rural cities, so the urban cities that have composed this, the cities came too fast, basically. Coming to places, this is São Paulo, that you are lucky if you are living inside the park, or if you can see a park or you can see a tree. So we came to this process of explosion and density, and it's really necessary to understand that if these persons and us, ourselves, and the cities are ourselves, we have to run to this process that we have to deal with the nature. Now we have generations, is not my case, but that grew up in cities and see a chicken is something difficult. They don't understand exactly what, for example, I go in my office from landscapers, and many times you have persons that never went to a track or walk barefoot. So we need to understand both things. You know, we need to understand the totality of spaces, and we need to understand more than that in order to move forward, to understand what are the demands of our generation and how to associate these 2 points very quickly. So, just put so So I made like this little video last Friday. This is from Google Earth. But what you see is in our city, in Ho Chi Minh City, is pretty much this conflict and what I've been speaking. Like the city in the 80s was like much smaller, and especially in the last 5 years, we have like this massive urban expansion of the city. That is something normal for a place like this. We have like 2 poles, and especially in Ho Chi Minh City, like we see this urban tissue growing substantially. So it's something that is already here. So we can go back. So what happened is we have full areas of town that a kind of urban structure were not considered in the beginning because of the fast expansion. So I have areas that have no trees at all, and how, in my opinion, is the best chance to deal, speaking first in big scale of this. For me, is very obvious the answer and how we're gonna need to deal with this. In the fast expansion of the city, combined with the lack of transportation, and now have a lot of debates about cars in the city and the subways. For me, the best way to understand how we're gonna transform this city, in my opinion, is that we don't see this as transportation. We need to understand that the changes that we're gonna have on the city on the future will be essential to the quality of the city. And the subway and like a few of the infrastructure systems that we're gonna need to build on the city will need to be aligned with urban landscape changes and architecture changes. Without that, it's unjustifiable to have, for example, we only be stuck in small scale like was private development. So we need to see a way that we are able to identify like the problems on our city, and like, for example, lack of green spaces, parks. For example, this is a kind of a flooding map of the areas, and you're gonna see that the subways is crossing to basically all these parts. So it will be important to associate all that in works that give quality to the city. Okay, so doing that is like that is important. For example, if we are doing a subway station, we need to create a park. If we are building a new road, we need to integrate like other kind of transportations. And we need to integrate this into a green systems of parks and green spaces. Without that, it's very hard to justify, because economically it will be very hard. For example, we cannot go in the very dense district on Bintan or Tan Binh or any kind of district. And you even can do that, but it will be very hard to justify to demolish like thousands of houses to do a park or to plant more trees. But this makes sense when we align to infrastructure work. So it's really important to see the infrastructure of the city as also as a landscape, global landscape work. So I did this small session. This is very close to our office in the Hanoi highway, but we did a small section. So things that can help the city. So number one, as you can see here on my left, for example, I was here with my father years ago, that is also a landscape, and he was impressed by, he's saying, they really cut the trees like, and they sculpt dragons in the middle of the road as landscaping works on the plants, on like so have a massive amount of works that is being doing on the gardens of the city. And these can be used in a wider range as an ecosystem. So for example, how to reduce the cost of the city and to create something a little bit more vast. So for example, we can transform these gardens in real fauna and flora corridors, for example. So for example, we can use our roads to collect water. we can use as buffer systems for the pluvial waters that are coming, and we can create like spaces that support wildlife. For example, in the middle of the city, this is possible. This is already happening, if we like or not. If you leave a small road without any intervention, you're going to see that the trees will. So instead of denying the nature of the city, it's good that we align to what is more modern now in the world. And what we realize is that we miss like wildlife. People want to see, like, I have worked with people who have huge amount of monies, and what they give more value is to the small things, pick up a fruit or see a bird. So this is possible if you want. The second point on the right is that it's important that we see also, and I'm going to show here, for example, that on these corridors of the subway MRT, we are able to create other ways of transportation. For example, bicycle lanes, aligned with, for example, here in Ho Chi Minh, and even in any city in Vietnam, it's nice to see that people cultivate vegetables in the middle of the road. So why to align what we are already doing and understand the nature of the space, creating like, for example, urban gardens on the city, places where we can ride our bicycles, and to do, especially on the right here, gardens that are and ecosystems that are flood resistant. So for example, it's important that the landscape is flood resistant, and is good if we reform one area of the city, that we plan a park that in a flooding, and these floodings will happen more and more. These parks are able to hold the water and later to bring back to the river in a slow rhythm. Because one of the problems of the flooding is not only the volume of water, is the speed that the rain comes. So for example, if we are able to create like parks that are flood resistant, will be wonderful. And if we are able to create urban ecosystems that have less maintenance, more interesting spaces like to use that reflect the demand, and align with things that are already there, like urban farming, this will be great for the city. So this is just a small study. So see how this is already happening. For example, I spoke about large scale, I speak about small scale. Although the image is a bit distorted, but this is just in front of my house. But this could be any street in Saigon. So for example, in small scale, in Ho Chi Minh, we are already creating like a small ecosystems, and small, like people like to put pots. In Brazil, for example, we import pots from Vietnam. So we already have this tradition of this instant landscape. So you rebuild the things, and then we are able to put like small plants over here. So in small scale, what we want is already happening, you know. So we have like a diversity of plants, a diversity of things going on in this micro scale. This is, in my opinion, is what is like this instant landscape made by private spaces. So this is great. This is something that I found quite unique. It's not everyone. So we already a few of these things happening, combined with use of very nice use of the public space, even in small scales. For example, you see the sidewalks being occupied by chairs. And for example, if you go across to the Bintan market, and I remember it was my first day in Saigon, I see everyone running with their tracks and putting, so this is one we should not deny, and no one develop not knowing what they are. So we need to understand what is happening in order to progress. So I'll speak about one project that we did. It's really small scale, but was quite interesting, and I think use a bit of this small scale intervention. This is a project that we got into alleyway in Nguyen Thi Minh Khai, where I used to live. And the first principle of the project was like, need to be something mobile, need to be something that identify elements of the city, And I say, as we are the ones sponsoring, so our office will sponsor this project, need to be something very cheap as well. So we say, look, we need to be, we're gonna work with under $300, and we're gonna do this pop-up event that was, so this is bringing, our project is inside this truck. So this is like the first process, we put everything inside. And we start to launch. This is surveillance cameras when we were doing this project. And one of the first things that we do, is we can see on this camera here, I went inside the contradiction of the street in Saigon that there's no limitations many times, so people use the spaces. So the first thing I say, although I live here and I understand, I say I'll play with one element that I find interesting. So the first thing that we did is that you can see on this first picture is that we tape the limits of the public space. We just put a red tape on the public space around. So we arrive there and say, okay, from this path, you cannot cross somehow. Because this happens a lot. Although we see a lot of streets with very lively life happening, we see that sometimes also we need to be able to deal with a few aspects, for example, accessibility, not all, maybe all the sidewalks, and parking lots. So basically, for example, here is a place that they just have cars. They have like all the public space on this alleyway is composed is occupied by 3 parking lots. So we tape this and we say, okay, from this part you cannot. And we got also, for example, the chairs that are used in Saigon, and they are very cheap. And plastic is an interesting element that, although we should be more aware of the single use of plastic. For example, plastic is an element that can be widely used on public space. They are extremely durable, cheap. So we compose these kind of sculptures. I don't know if you are familiar with the sculpture Brancusi, but I made my kind of translation of the infinity column of Brancusi with the plastic chairs of Saigon. And we use also elements that were the hammocks. So for example, hammocks is very interesting that hammocks, they are an element that, first they are good for our backs many times. And for example, in Ho Chi Minh, for example, and even if you go to the countryside, for example, you see people using hammocks even in public spaces, even in coffee shops, for example. So you have the coffee shop with hammocks, this kind of thing. So we occupied with these hammocks. And this is what happened at night, basically, you know. So I think at night, this is a part of an event they call playtime. So at night, people start to gather around, they did a dance event. And what was a normal alleyway had become something like with a different dynamics of space. And later on, we give this folder as well. So a part of making this very immediate thing, that is something traditional from here, we give this folder, and it's available from us, you know. So we say, okay, if you want to implement this project anywhere else, these are the instructions. So it's to you the project. So I'll speak about another project in a different dimension that we work. And we landscapers, we have something interesting about us. We always work in collaboration. It's rarely that we don't work, we are the main designers. But so this was a project that we work in collaboration with hydrologists, and we work in collaboration with different partners. And this was from the Da Nang, the Han River side. And on this project, we went from passing from this micro scale to the largest scale that we worked so far, that was 1,800 kilometers. And our main thing from this project, and we were, and again, coming to the points of how the city should be what it already is. So we were trying to analyze what this river were before. before this urban expansion. And we start by this tip here on our right, that we realized that was missing a riparian forest. Riparian forest is probably the most important forest that you can have inside the city. The riparian forest is the forest that you have on the river edge. So for example, on the first 100 meters, this is still a kind of riparian forest. This is where the small fishes go there to reproduce, and where you have all the kind of fauna and flora. And this riparian forest is sometimes, and speaking about Da Nang, is good even for flood. They are flood resistant. They help they diminish the speed of water. So for example, our first action was to recreate this riparian forest on the river tip, aligning and combining with a kind of landmark project for Da Nang. So we create these totems that they were like to retrieve the soil. And on the back, although the perspective is a bit dark, we were trying to recreate this. They call the Nipa fruticans, that is the water coconut. So these water coconuts, they are great for especially in Saigon or any all the part of southern Vietnam. They are great. They are flood resistant. They help. So we try to recreate to bring the fauna and flora back, and also to help to reduce the speed of water on the river. And we create several parks on the city. Some were more natural related, and some have another divergencies. But have one particularly that I was really interested, that in Da Nang they have the Marble Mountains. And what happened on the Marble Mountains is that you have a big process of urbanization around the urban expansion around the mountains itself. And the Marble Mountains is a natural heritage of Da Nang. This is you have temples inside these caves. So how we are able to align a design and the landscape of this with something that we're able to bring these elements back to life, So the first thing I say, we need to stop the expansion of the city on this path. And we create a series of amendments on this park. So for each mountain, we create basically, we try to name them, and we try to create these pathways that we realize that if you are visiting Da Nang, you basically could stop one day more on the city. So for example, for tourism and economic purpose, this would be great. So you could start on the first, they have earth, fire, and what. They have a few names that I miss now, but we create these paths that they have two purposes. One, to walk around, obviously, but we have also a process that was to retain the expansion. And it's pretty much the same process that I show on the playtime, that we put the tape to say, okay, you cannot cross from this limit. With some parks and a few actions, for example, pathways, you can also say to the city, okay, here has my limit, you cannot cross from here. This will be the natural park, and this will be something to be used, have a common use. Because sometimes just by personal interest, you lose the main goal, the main purpose of a symbolic element. And we realize that. And the last point was we are trying to work on the symbolism and also a few of the elements that we thought that were essential. For example, they have the lotus tradition. That is something that is wonderful here in all Vietnam. So you have these lotus gardens, and we have some farming. So again, our approach was trying to integrate local environments and local agriculture together with a space that was used and was more symbolic. It was pretty much that. So we have the pathways integrated with the rivers, and we have the rice fields, and we have this. Okay. How long? I'm already speaking too much now. Okay, I have 2 more projects. In Brazil, we speak too much. That's also like, but anyway, I will speak anyway. So I will show another project because I just speaking about Vietnam, but I think we have different questions for different places. And last year we were engaged in a very interesting competition that we won. No, we didn't win. We got the 2nd place, but anyway. But it's for Brasilia. So Brasilia is a modernist city from the 60s. You just have 2 modernist cities, Chandigarh and Brasilia. Personally, I found Brasilia more interesting, maybe because I'm Brazilian. But in Brasilia, they have a very interesting thing. So was pretty much done by 2 architects, Nehemiah and Lúcio Costa. And Lúcio Costa working all the residential buildings. And Nehemiah work on this first, they call the monumental acts. So all the public buildings. And has something that was interesting because the most important landscape of Brazil called Burle Marx, that was that. And Nehemiah, they didn't get so well most of the times. Nehemiah wanted to show his ideas, and they have some interesting collaborations, but in generally, I don't know why they could collaborate more. But the subject of the competition was the reason that they choose the site. So in the center of Brazil is a bit more arid, it's not the Amazonia, and they have lack of water. And they select this site because they create this dam that you can see on the top that they call Lake Paranoá. And the Lake Paranoá have almost 80 kilometers of perimeter. And what we realize, and anyway, so this was the subject of the competition, do all the edge of the Lake Paranoá. But the first act that we notice is that if there's, some cities have lack of public spaces, and some cities they have excess of public spaces. Brasilia is a place that I will not call excess, but they have a lot of public spaces already. If you go to Brasilia, you're gonna cross to like vast areas. It's very hard to walk. The city was done by to be used by cars, and you have excess of public spaces, and it's a city that you think everything was planned. So we were walking there, and we thought that we should not design more public spaces, basically. So our main proposal, this called the, I don't know the name in English, but vicinal path. Vicinal path is the path that is made when someone walks in the grass or by use of people. So we thought that would be interesting to use this path used by people in order to start the first actions of this site. So you're gonna see that the interventions were pretty simple, you know. So sometimes I think our work as landscapers is not to propose more things, but also to know, and most of the time, especially even here in Vietnam, is to know where we should not intervene. And this case of Brasilia was a place of that. We did a project that we have almost no intervention, very few interventions related to transportation and use of water, but design-wise, we decided to keep all the paths. We didn't want to create new paths because we thought that in a city that everything is designed, to not design will be the best thing. And this was the overall picture that we thought that was more interesting. So we work with hydrologists from Spain. And here and everywhere we are having or too much water or lack of water. Brasilia, they have lack of water. And we saw that explaining graphically that the rivers were being occupied. So we are having pretty much water-related problems. So with a few actions, I'm not gonna get in detail, but by disoccupying some of these river mouths and by planting again and creating a composite of ecosystem, we were able to have more water basically on the river, because one of the points that they were coming is like if in 30 years the water level will be lower. So what's the point of making a competition of the river edge if there's no water? So we're working structural and transportation efforts in order to link all this. Okay. And the symbol of the project, lately we said, okay, we need a symbol of the project. The symbol of the projects, I think in Vietnam you don't have, but in the 70s and 80s in Brazil, I don't know why, but all the old pools, they have a kind of trampoline that you jump from the water. In Vietnam, I think I haven't seen so much. I don't know what people had in their mind at that time, that think that you need a deep pool, and then you go and you jump from the trampoline, because there's not so many people doing that. But okay, if we have a symbol, so all the projects, we all have a kind of small trampoline. So we can go there and jump. Because we thought it was a kind of, okay, we don't do too much design, but we have the act of jump from one place. So this was, so I'm going for the last project. Okay. So this is a project that combines a bit infrastructure and landscape. Is an airport for Nha Trang, and was a very nice project because it was very fast. We arrived, normally people don't, here in Vietnam, landscape for airports is not something that is used so much. And we were working on these different scales and thinking about the speed that we see the thing. So for example, from the air, the jets need to be larger, and from when we are on the drop-off, the elements need to be a little bit smaller. So we were coming from this large scale to this very small scale. And we create this composite of shading and sitting spaces that they are a bit unrelated. Came a guy asking me like why the shading were not related to the bench, because one of the things is that actually in an airport you cannot, they call, I forgot the name of design that is, you need to do a design that is not too comfortable for airport, or if you are doing a subway station, you don't want people to sleep there on the thing. So we change a bit the shapes sometimes, so you have like shading spaces that change during the day, but along the day sometimes you're in the sun, so you need to move. You cannot go there and sleep on the, so and one thing that you see, I don't know if you see the size of the person, but we work, the scale was larger, you know, because people walk very fast, they don't have, they're gonna see this if the elements are larger, and we associate with this, you know. So they just is one of the parts of our project, but this was the, let's say, the one that was better done. So we have these people crossing to these very large benches and shading spaces, and we create this kind of composites of shading and benches and softscape elements, trees, and is this. Yeah, it's finished. Okay, thank you. Fine.
I know you've been opening your office quite a long time ago, 2003, with a lot of projects, particularly in hospitality, and particularly in the south of Vietnam. I know you like really to stay within that area, and you have developed quite a deep relation with greeneries and solutions about how to improve your project through that topic. I know that for having been able to talk with you, you have a great consciousness of how to preserve nature for the future generation. This is some worry that you have apparently quite deep in your guts, and you always try to find ways to improve your project. You even mentioned to me when we were discussing that you have a relation with green that evolves with time, and you always try to find ways to go differently with that topic of green. So we are just waiting to see all your projects. No Brazilian time, Vietnamese time.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. My company was founded in 2003, almost 17 years from now. I still question what I'm doing today in terms of architecture, but somehow that I see the fact of my city, at Ho Chi Minh City. It's like Pedro mentioned, how the Google changed, and you see the gray more, the white things more appearance, and then the green is less and less and less. I mean, I'm talking about green is in tree, not green in material. And that's what we see today. For me, it's scary about what people in Ho Chi Minh City go to achieve. But actually, right now, in terms of open space, we had 0.5 square meter per person, but supposed to have 7 square meter per person. But if you talk about in Seoul or Singapore, I mean, though that city, from 30 to 40 square meter per person. So it's a huge difference. So you see a lot of Saigon alleys, to see the combination, how people use the open space in multiple purpose. So can be a coffee shop, can be breakfast, can be the people where hanging out a chit chat with the neighbor together. And I'm really concerned about how fast the city develop. I mean, in the central areas, and what we see actual every day is about the traffic and the flooding. So, as an architect, I see the fact in the city, and might be in Hanoi as well. So we talk about what shall we do for our job, in our job, to be a part of, at least we keep the balance between open space and actual physical use, at least in visual balance. And then we see it later. So from that point of view, we start to create the projects from 2015. So this project with our idea is to create a lush garden in a very central courtyard, very simple. And we try to use as little material as possible, and even a landscape become a part of architecture. So we say nature is taking over the architecture. And where you finally see a lot of shadow and waters and green element is to be a part, very important in our architecture. And so here and there, we try as much as we can. Natural elements is very important through our projects. And another house for a friend of mine in Vũng Tàu is where we have the same principle. Instead of build one block, very small house, so we try to keep it as low as we can. Only single-story building with 400 square meter land, and we built 180 square meter for 3 bedrooms. And we split in 3 different blocks and connected with the outdoor corridor. And again, we play with shadow and sun shading and waters in green. It's the same thing for this project. We did Yunnan Garden Fuku. So what we do is, so client is the new developers, they start up, so they don't really have a lot of money, to be honest. So they can't compete with others. So they discuss with me like, what shall we do the products? To be minimum investment and but maximum profitable for end user. So what I say, can you maximum your lands for the owner buy, the people who buy the villas, and to build as low as you can, because so at the end of the day, the price of the villas less than half with the neighbors selling. So therefore, I create the small, the idea of small Vietnamese village, where you inward orientation, where you have no beach in Phu Quoc. So like a village, small, and everybody have their own indoor landscape. Even living dining kitchen, you don't have the doors and windows. So try to minimize the construction costs. At the end of the day, you gain more, I mean, not only profit for developer, but the benefit for end user, they see something different which they never seen before in the same areas. So everything's tried, you know, again in the same principle. The fence becomes the part of the house, and everything naturally related. We just moved our new office, which is very near my house. I'm going to show you both. So our new office is very well connected with the landscape, and I don't want to see this. So we try to connect as much as with the open space as possible. And the office is very simple, follow regulation. We had a setback, and we had all transparent on the ground floor, and very functional on first creative part, and we had the technical part on the second floor. And we had as much as we can to open the void and in between. And very functional economical design. We had a sunshade, and where the people sit down, you're allowed to have a little window on this too. But by having this layout, everyone has their own daylight in their workspace, which is everybody like it. So you see the relationship between these two, and I keep trying to hit in as much concrete that I can, and at least not the green. I mean, what we do with other materials. But somehow, yes, minimum the construction cost, minimum different materials. I tried, and the architecture, the space, very well connected with nature. We create for sunshine, shadows, the movement of the trees. Here I use a lot of bamboo, same as previous office. And then all the furnitures on the ground floor, I use glass because I want to disappear when no people, there are no people. So the space retain back as the way it is. And at the design office, so we had some glass partition for an outdoor meeting. So very exciting to sit outside. And all the spaces are connected with the garden and very enlarged the space by this way design, and very economic in the way minimize the heights of the glass. And at the tropicals, so we had a lot of canopy, and we minimize the opening of the window, just enough from the table up. So above there remain a space for allow scale model and also the drawings. It's really very happy with new office working environment. Petrol over there. And most of the time in the day, if there is sunlight, so we don't really have to open the electricity for the light, not for the light. And the same principle by designing, so we had tried to connect it all the people around the studio as much as we can. So we had kind of separate structure, very light in combination between shelf and also the staircase. That's how you see all the related for the space between horizontal and vertical. Okay, now you see it's turned out. We work a little bit late, after 6 or 7. This project, where we talk about like in the old town of Saigon, this one in District 3, and our project is here. So you're getting 40 south, and you come to the small alleys. So you see existing the urban where the low rise, high density in the old areas. And so what we trying to do is to discuss a lot back and forth with our client how to sacrifice the more open space and then less than usable space as much as we can. So create a lot of sun shading canopy, and then created a lot of waters, green feature, and to reflect a part of horizontal connection between living space and vertical. So by that way, they are happy to live with their own private part, let's say, because the neighbor is quite congested and there are no open space. So that's what you see on above. So the house become like a new part of the neighbor. And of course, when you look outside, they still maintain the small and doesn't have to be big like this, and looks very modesty. But you see the relationship between the old and new in terms of volume. And again, this house also oriented in the west side, so I'm very much concerned when we design the architecture, and you have to care about sun orientation by having that ways. So you see, I had very nice section, all natural ventilation. That's how you enter to the house. The lobby going through. This is water features and a sunken lounge for living dining kitchen. So that's how you see the house is breathing, and you don't have to do much about air conditioning and so on. Well, if you have a choice, of course. But here, it's very cool and fresh and feeling like relaxed. And I place a lot of with shadows with the hanging plant. Even in bedroom, you look to other bedrooms through the void. And again, the relationship between humans with landscape, human with human, in horizontal and vertical direction. It's something I like very much about this house as well. On one side, I put a vertical circulation, the staircase underneath, but this is the altar above. And that's what you see, the staircase. I had the curve, to allow for the air well, how to call it, the natural light control in the days on both sides. And most of the areas where you need the privacy, I all try to have the open air to the sky. And very interesting in the way that the house, again, the breathing during the time, the day, by the light changing, and you had different mood and different touch. So that's how it turns out at night. And this is just finished, but we plan the climbing plant, supposed to green up all this part and to give it more privacy for from the neighbors. My house. It's District 2, where very near my office. So here is Estella height, counter view. So the land is in the middle of jungle concrete. So this is a small part, but on the west side. So I don't know what to do with the design, but at the end, if you see the scale, the relationship in terms of volume, and of course, and I don't want to look to the high rise. So what I did is I designed the house 50% for living and 50% for void and the landscape. So I will look at it from the room and I don't have to look outside. So that the solution for this location. And you see how it's worked in the section. So I plant koi fish pond and the garden. So between the same principle of any other project, I had the sliding, so to maximum the ground level, one fence to the fence, so to be a part of the living space. So landscape is everywhere. Of course, the same thing like in tropical house, you need to control the certain amount of the daylight, not too much, not less. So by this way, very interesting the void, and you see in the section, and the side, and the front, and the back, at the front and the back, and the house also breathing during the day. And I have this. That's why I'm called Sky House. Look it up. Don't look at the neighbor because jungle of concrete. So, and then I had the contacts, vertical contact, horizontal contact. See the people. They can see everywhere. I mean through the courtyard. And even on the horizontal side, so as I say, half of for looking, half of for physical living, and it's very interesting. So you feel your space always in touch with nature, and you control the view where you look at it in terms of privacy, in terms of what you will look outside. And all under your control from this context. And you see here the terrace outside. It's very much connected between inside and connection to above, and I can look at it to the living, dining, kitchen of any direction. So at the same time, like you look from living, dining, kitchen, you look up the plant and trees above, and you look in part of outside sun going through to the terrace and go to the house. And again, the house also breathing. I can control the light anywhere during the day, and the sun is changed, so the shadow changed. And the light also change. I mean, the difference in the morning, afternoon, and noon time. And the principle of the house, like the cave, the cubic box, and you dig inside with the like square, playing one element only, and you found make it simple. And I tried the new material for myself, like meditation place, where you have outer connection with. I make in traditional Vietnamese, we had enclosed room. And we don't want to our past generation to be in an enclosed room. So we want to have the daily connection, our past generation with us by passing through. I had very interesting, very nice garden in the rooftop. And daily passing, so I see the past people, and they also enjoy our garden. And the house has no walls. The room has no walls. So structure, architecture, interior is just one element. It's the steel material. So before ends, I'd like to show you a very short movie. How we sighted in our studio for one day work, a bit of one day. So thank you very much.
She has, for a long time, had the passion to develop sustainable communities. And you did that for quite a long time in California. I know you have worked for some of the top sustainable architectural and engineer companies in California. It's only recently that you came back to Vietnam, and with all your background, your luggage, your passion, and you are working today for a developer. And the developer is the devil for all the designers, of course. But it's good to hear that people like you try to like bring some of these design sustainable notion into our client, actually. And I think we're very interested to see how you can do that, and what are your tools, what are your goals also, and what you can achieve. Please, I have it here.
Yeah. Thank you for the introduction. Okay. Okay, cool. Hi. So first, thank you, GA, for inviting me here. And it's very hard to follow up after Man's presentation, especially since my approach is going to be very different from what you've seen so far. There's not as many pretty pictures, but I'm hoping to, lay out kind of a framework of how, because I'm assuming the majority of you are architects or designers or engineers of sort, how you would, consider this topic for your clients, because I'm speaking as a client, from a client perspective. So a little bit about us. So EasyLand is relatively young. Our main target market is actually young professionals who are buying their apartments for the first time, so first-time homeowner. And the vision is, to try to provide a quality and sustainable home at a price that I think the mass can afford. So most of our apartments are under 2 billion. And we have roots in Europe, and I think that's why we are a little bit more willing to engage in this notion. So I'm going to start out to talk about our motivation as developer. How did that come about? Why do we decide to get into sustainable development? So I have to stress this. I think it's very important when you see developers to get into this field. I believe, based on my experience, is that 50% of that is personal motivation. So that our senior management actually have, I want to say, a true belief in sustainability. Why? Because they really want a different future for us, parents, and most importantly for the children, right? Maybe you guys can give me a raise of hand of how many of you have personally experienced this in Saigon, right? I bet almost all of you. So bad air quality, urban flood, right? How many of you have know someone who experienced this? So a little bit less, fewer, right? How many of us read about this, right? So this is what's going on right now in the Central Park, right? Soil erosion, major flood, hurricanes after hurricanes. So the question is what can we do as developer, as architect, as engineers, as contractor, and even as user, right, to change this future for us? Because it can only get worse, really. I think that was the main motivation, because I don't know how many of you know, but we contribute to climate change. And when I say we here, I speak mostly as a developer, but it also includes the architects, the engineers, the contractors, basically the construction industry. So I think this fact is not very well known among the design circle. Actually, as an industry, we contribute to almost 40% of the global CO2 emission worldwide. So our sector alone, so that is anything we build and operate, contribute to 40%. That's a huge number, right? Building operation is a major component, 28%. That is the light that you're using, the energy you're using to heat your house, cool your house, to run all the machines in it. And then the other 11% coming from material and construction. And if you never thought of it, this 11%, the amount of energy required for the resources, to be extracted, so like wood coming from the forest, gravels coming from the mountain, be processed, and then transport to end user, and then, go around. So all of that together is 40% of the global CO2. So we are a major player. And I think not many architects or designers or engineers actually aware of that. So look, like transportation, right? We usually think this is the main contributor, but the building alone, 40%, transportation on that cars and airplanes, only 22%. So we are the most guilty. And then if you go one scale down, as architect, designer, developers, we contribute unknowingly or knowingly to the air pollutants inside the house, right? I think these are issues that are not very well aware, even in the West. It just started bubbling up now. But 90% of our lives are spent indoors, right? You sleep in the house, you get out of the house, and you immediately get to the office and you're inside again, right? So all the living environment that we're constantly in is actually built, like artificial. We're not outside much. And so us, in the construction industry, we're actually shaping the living environment of all of the people that you know, actually. And, if we have enough light, we have enough wind in the house, we have enough healthy materials, all of that affect your mood, your happiness, unconsciously, right? And the people who are living in that environment, they're not even aware that they are being shaped by the environment. So that is to say that our role in this is very, very big. And so we have that responsibility. And for Vietnam alone, I think as a construction industry, we are responsible to decide if Vietnam, at this stage, going to become like Hong Kong. There's a concrete jungle here. Or we can go more a moderate path, like Singapore. And for those who, you're going to have clients that probably don't care much about the environment if they don't find it relevant. I also want to stress that, so XANH has been doing this before COVID, right? We do it out of our personal belief. But after COVID, we realized, very importantly, that the whole investment world is actually shifting that way as well. And why is that? So here's a quick example. This is an index of sustainable investment versus a traditional portfolio. So you can see the difference is about 1.5%. You might not think that much. This is a return on investment, right? But if you have trillion of dollars, or million of dollars even, 1.5% means 100 millions more for you if you pursue a sustainable portfolio versus a traditional portfolio. So profitability-wise, that is a huge incentive. So here I'm cutting a little bit of the published new standard for investing from BlackRock. And this is the biggest asset management in the world, manager. So they're managing about 7.5 trillion of assets. So if someone, like BlackRock, so big and arguably so profitable, even them, they decide that now is the time to go sustainable route, then I think that means something. And for the investment world, the sustainable route actually encompasses a little bit more than the environment that I mentioned previously, but also social and governance. So that was our start point. And then, we have a long journey to get where we are. And I want to share a little bit with you the challenges so that you understand it from the perspective of your client, right? What we've seen so far is that it's hard to do sustainable development in Vietnam because there is very little incentive and also the lack of ecosystem. Tenants, buyers, homeowners, they're practically not very well aware of the issues of why would they want to own a sustainable house. For the other developers, also the profitability part is not clear. Only recently it has become more clear with COVID-19 and the effect of the pandemic. But before that, it has always been in contest, so to speak. And then green finance, because in the development world, money is money. If you don't make money, you don't have a project. So there's no clear incentive provided by the government or any other system that push or nudge the developers a little bit more in that way. And personally, I found it very frustrating that in Vietnam at the moment, there is no ecosystem. It's very hard for us if we want to do sustainable materials, healthy materials, we don't know where the vendors are. I spent a lot of time looking for the composite granite for our landscape. And it was just impossible to find because it's not imported, it's not made here. So even on this idea that we have, we are limited by what is provided to us on the market. And then, of course, there's the issue of lack of verified information. What does I mean with that? Here you have 3 very beautiful projects, very different. They all claim that they're green, right? From the perspective of a client, of a homeowner, they won't be able to tell the difference. Like, how can they verify this is greener than this, or this is greener than this, right? So that's the challenge we're facing, because after COVID, almost all developers, new projects are claiming that they are now the resort of the city, the greenest place to be, right? So how can you tell the real one from all that PR materials? Which leads me to, we actually need certification. And this is also something that I've personally have been struggling with our vendors, suppliers, designers even, because the most common argument that I've met as a developer is that a lot of people would run by rule of thumbs, especially here in Vietnam. So they would tell me, you just need to orient your building a certain orientation, and that should be enough. But as I said, like these 3 projects, they probably orient the correct way, but then how can you tell one is better than the other, right? So that's why you need a third-party verification. The problem is, for third-party verification, the cost is enormous, especially when, like LEED or Living Building Challenge, they base abroad, so their fees structure is a US dollar system. The time that it takes for you to go through documentation is also painful. I personally experienced it. And I understand why people don't want to do it, because it's very rigorous. And the effort, it doesn't just require of the architect, but also during construction, the contractor has to keep track of all the materials that they're using on the project, all the proof that they are doing it correctly. So the certification part is a big challenge that I think it would take some time for the Vietnamese market to catch up. But the good news is you can always start somewhere. And I'm happy to report back. We started this almost by luck, really. It came after the project was already designed, and then the company decided they want, a proper look at the project to see how actually sustainable they are. And with proper design, we achieved the basic very easily. And I mean, the basic here is already better than what you do otherwise, right? This is the super basic part of being green. Like EDGE is the certification by the World Bank. It is designed to have a super low barrier entry so that developers don't get overwhelmed and then turn away and just not even care about green building. But even that, we get 29% savings of energy compared to a normal project that didn't even take into account on the cool roof, cool wall orientation, right? By using the proper water fixture, we save 32%. It's quite a bit. And in choosing our materials, like the unfired brick, we save 48%. So the argument here is actually very compelling, is that if you just pay a little bit attention, easily, you already achieve this much on your project with no major change in construction costs. So this is something that you as designers should keep in mind for your next client, because my understanding is that whenever sustainability and green topic comes up, the number one resistance has always been cost. But just with a little planning, that hurdle is easily overcome. So from there, we're very happy with our first effort. From there, we wanted to go beyond that, go a little bit further, right? So here I already mentioned for the first project, we did already roof insulation, cool wall, low flow water fixture, and fire brick. So then the obvious question is, where else can we go from there? And I had this discussion yesterday with some of the speakers. It's actually very interesting. The basic stuff we have achieved, now is the time to go a little bit more heavy on the capital expenditure. So we're looking at solar panels for our project. From the investor perspective, it doesn't make sense because the return period is so long, 25 years. But we are getting creative by reaching out to other agencies. So we're exploring options with the German Development Bank, the French government agency responsible for sustainable development. And then we're going a different route that a traditional investor would take. And then we're looking at charging station for electrical vehicle in our projects, because we also want to encourage our residents to the new method of transportation, of saving gas. And then this one here is actually quite ambitious. We really want to hit home with our residents on the healthy materials, so that they know that the apartment they're buying from us, they're not breathing in on the toxic gas that is still being released by the paints that you use, right? Or even by the flooring. So that takes me to the current efforts of EasyLand is that the education of our customers. So we maintain a Facebook page in which I think almost every week we have a little post on the different sustainable materials, sustainable approach, construction, of why do we want to do that. So we are hoping that in the long run, we become this source of wealth of information for our customer, because if our customer is not aware and appreciate what we're doing, we cannot be sustainable ourselves as a business. So one of the bigger hurdle is really the education of the clientele base. And then in this process, we're trying to educate our partners and competitors. We have a development guideline, construction safety. We are trying to push our contractor and vendors and suppliers to be more rigorous with their products. So here's an example of, this is a carpet company that is going through verification of third party. So this is their product before verification, right? You can see it's very typical of any manufacturer. The ingredient list is short and looks fine, right? But by having third-party verification, it's very obvious that there are a whole lot more information here that you don't know about. So this is something that we are trying to push forward with our supplier and vendors, because I think it's important that everyone is transparent and be very rigorous in their approach. And this also highlights an important issue is that I think in Vietnam we need a coalition of this industry. I know that there's already a Vietnam Green Council, but I think for the most part it consists mostly of architects, probably landscape architects and other designers. But we have never had a coalition, between developers and architects and engineers and vendors and suppliers. And for the whole industry to go that way, there needs to be cross department or cross industry cooperation. And then this is something that I also see lacking here is there's a lot of talk about sustainability, about green architecture, but there is no clear commitment on where we're trying to get to and how do we get there. At XANH, I have to admit we haven't been able to do this. So this is actually a screenshot of CapitaLand. It's a Singaporean developer, and I have to say that they are way ahead of us, because also Singapore is way ahead of Vietnam. But they make very clear of their commitment for 2030, right? They're trying to go low carbon, crazy water conservation. They're trying to reduce their water consumption of all the project by 45%. Is a huge amount. And waste management and circular economy. And this is what XANH is aspiring to do. We are in the process of doing this, and we're hoping that by the end of this next year, we have something similar that speaks to our aspiration. And then here is an example of the American Institute of Architects, of how it's basically a pledge by all the architects who want to be on board of this train to achieve zero embodied carbon for all of their projects, for their clients. So this commitment thing that's happening at American Institute of Architects are basically trying to create this ecosystem of designers, and that everyone get a little nudge to go forward. So I think at XANH we are hoping to set an example or follow an example of CapitaLand, and then we're hoping to also facilitate something like this with the designers. So that's it.
Thank you, Gilda, for the nice introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure today to have a chance to share with you some of the facts and the challenges of urban development in Ho Chi Minh City and the strategy regarding spatial urban planning in the biggest city of Vietnam. And my presentation, as you can see, that it is horizontal urban expansion or vertical urban redevelopment, a strategic decision towards sustainability in Ho Chi Minh City. So it seems that my topic is a little bit different compared with the other topic. Allow me to say that it is a kind of macro level. The fact and the issue that I introduce here is at a macro level. And I can say that the other speaker already approached at the beginning, in general, of their presentation, the macro level issue. But then they already focus on a micro level. So I hope that I can see I can introduce something a little bit different here. City is the main content of my topic. I come from academic environment, so it have a very structuring introduction of my the main content of my topic. I will start with theoretical concept in urban planning field, and then after that I will introduce some fact of urban development in Ho Chi Minh City, and based on it, I will try to identify the gap and the challenge of planning of urban planning in Ho Chi Minh City in particular and of Vietnam in general. And at the end of the presentation, there will be a practical recommendation regarding the urban planning system and urban planning tasks for Ho Chi Minh City and for Vietnam. Let's start. I think that most of you work in the field of urban planning, urban design, or architecture, so you might be familiar with the concept that let me reintroduce the concept of greenfield and brownfield. In urban planning field, we have two main kind of concept: greenfield and brownfield. Greenfield, why greenfield focus on the area that urban area that have not any kind of development or urban development on this, and it is typically kind of agricultural land or the good land, the forest, the wetland, and the location of this greenfield area typically in the suburban area surrounding a small, medium, or big city, right? And brownfield is different. Brownfield typically it is used for the previous industrial land, but you can generate the concept into the own type of the existing development on mainly inner area of the city, commercial land, warehouse, the port, and residential house as well. And it have regarding the characteristic, it have some main differences. The greenfield area, it typically should be green, right? And it's clean and it's more ready for the development rather than the brownfield area. And based on the main kind of development, urban development, depending, for example, greenfield development or brownfield development, we have two different outcomes of urban development regarding the morphological transformation or urban form transformation of the city. We have the phenomenon of urban sprawl. That it is a phenomenon, the consequence or the outcome of greenfield-based development, leading to kind of horizontal urban expansion toward every different direction of the city. If we have a brownfield-based development, it will be typically urban redevelopment strategy that will likely, if we have a good preparation and a good concept from the beginning, likely lead to the compact city development with higher density and mixed use of the different function or activity, urban activity within one area. There's both pro and cons for urban sprawl and urban redevelopment, or greenfield development or brownfield development. I can point out the detail different regarding the different aspects. For example, the use of land, of course. For example, the kind of the impact of the form of the urban development to the need kind of the urban mobility development. For example, urban sprawl will lead to the increased mobility and the private transport orientation. And urban redevelopment will be a good precondition for public transport development and a more efficient infrastructure investment, including transport and other infrastructure. But I do not want to introduce the difference between each detail aspect. I want to show the pro and con, and we can see that it seems that, and from the literature review and from many kind of urban reality all around the world, we see that urban sprawl seem to have a lot of kind of disadvantages. Here, I just name a few. And it have only main advantage. Okay. And it's mainly because of the ready for development characteristic. It have a big advantage to attract the investment, especially from private sector and sometimes public sector or foreigner investor, regarding the level of ready to use, regarding the level of complication of the procedure of planning requirement, land compensation or something like this. But this main advantage leading to a kind of much more widespread application of phenomenon worldwide and in Vietnam. I mean that urban sprawl phenomenon we can find out all around the world. The map from Peru, the map from Mike, and also the map from Hien. So this phenomenon for the case of Vietnam. I will reintroduce the case with another perspective and with some fact and evidence-based introduction for you. The very famous comparison between, and that show the difference of urban sprawl and urban redevelopment and urban sprawl and compact city development is a case of Atlanta and Barcelona with the same size of population, 2-something million, same level of development, same level of economic development. But because of the concept inside, when they prepare the kind of the master plan of the city, we can see that it is a real scale, a comparative scale, that Atlanta have a kind of more than 4,000 square kilometers of land. And Barcelona, with the same population, just live within a much smaller area. So, what is better? Of course, we should have a more fact to analyze and see if the quality of life, if the perception of the citizen, of the worker living in the city. But from the sustainable point of view, it seems that Barcelona have done a better job in terms of planning, in terms of using the limited resource of land, in terms of having Barcelona is very well known for have a livable city in the city center, and people can have a daily interaction, outdoor coffee, of course, not within this period, but normally, right? And this is a famous example in urban planning field to show that if we have a good concept from the beginning, a good preparation of master plan, and of course a good implementation strategy, then we can have a very good and positive outcome for city development. Let's come back to Ho Chi Minh City. Ho Chi Minh City is the biggest city of Vietnam in terms of population, and it is economic central and capital of Vietnam with 20% of GDP generated and 30% of revenue contributed to national budget, right? And we are facing with a very high level of population growth of about 2% per year. It means that every year we have a new population of 200,000 inhabitants, equivalent to a medium-sized city in Europe, right? So you can imagine the scale of development of Ho Chi Minh City. Here it is a map, another map to show the urban sprawl phenomenon. During the last about more than two decades, we can witness very clearly the urban expansion process of Ho Chi Minh City toward mostly every different direction, physical direction, geographical direction of the city. It's a massive change, and it's beyond. We can witness already within this map, this series of map, the greenfield-based development. or the massive land use conversion from agricultural land in suburban area to the new urban area, especially. And here's some data. The data is a little bit old, I need to update it. But it is a land use change during 2000 up to 2015, 14. We can witness a very strong degree of agricultural land and a big increase of non-agricultural land, including residential land, commercial land, industrial land, many things. And it is for the whole city. Let's take a look on a particular sector that consumes many land area in the city, housing development, right? We have, here's data from, do you know how many housing development projects in Ho Chi Minh City? Any number?
1,000.
1,000? Yes, it's something like this. 1,200 something, I don't remember exactly. Housing development project, of course, at different step of development in Ho Chi Minh City, and of course with different scale of development of land area. Here's a housing project by district, just the total number, not having the kind of the status of development inside. But you can see, if you are familiar with a little bit with the geography of Ho Chi Minh City, and you can see that in the housing development project located mainly in the suburban area of the city, it is a fact. Here's reading the number of projects, and here's the expected housing unit that will be developed within this project. District 9, the project of EZ land, for example. District 2, District 2 Đức, for example, and some other. So housing development located in suburban area, right? And here's a kind of very simple GIS map to show as well the scale of development of housing development project by land area, by housing unit, and by gross floor area. All three indicators show that, again, confirm that the land will be mobilized mainly in suburban area for residential purpose. And maybe you have some first impression regarding the scale of development of housing, but there's other number that I believe that will give you more impression on the case. Although that we can think that housing development project contribute to the kind of the massive change in terms of land use, in terms of morphological, in terms of landscape of the city, landscape at a larger scale. But the data show that we have a much more impressive phenomenon regarding self-construction housing. During the last 2-3 decades, the number of housing units built by the residents themselves, not within the housing development project, occupy more than 80% of housing, new housing construction. And again, if you take a look on the geographical distribution of this house. Okay, District Gò Vấp, Bình Tân, Thủ Đức again, District 9 again, suburban area, a little bit different than the housing development project, but still we can see some common name, right? And regarding the number of housing units and a kind of a GFA scale, it is very massive as well, even when you compare with the housing development project. And here's a kind of also another overlaying technique on GIS map that we try to compare the average, average altitude or elevation level of Ho Chi Minh City during 10 years, after 10 years, because we only have the in 2003 and 2012. And we see that after only 10 years, we use the same scale, coloring scale, and the lowland area or the green field area disappear a little bit, and it become construction land, and as a result, as a consequence, the average level of altitude increase. Especially, for example, South Saigon or Phú Mỹ Hưng area, Thủ Thiêm area, somewhere here, and Bình Chánh area, for example. And it is something that we should pay attention, because it's come from the real development of Ho Chi Minh City. And if we look into the existing master plan of Ho Chi Minh City and put it into the map of average altitude or elevation level of land of city, we see that this master plan have a vision up to 2030. If we continue to implement such master plan, there's a lot of more construction or development or project in lowland area or greenfield area of the city. A lot of more. And it will be something that will affect. We are really tired of flooding, right? Everyone talk about this. And if we just continue such master plan, to implement such a master plan, I believe that the problem can become worse and worse, and we can never resolve the issue. Because of the macro development strategy. So, you see, again, after 10 years, elevation decrease, increase. And if we continue, it will still increase from time to time. And by whatever solution, technically or policy or whatever, if we just continue with it, I believe that we cannot resolve the flooding problem. It's very practical. Here's some more things that I want to introduce, because we conduct GIS analysis regarding the population density transformation of Ho Chi Minh City by distance from the city center, just to see how the population distribute, and we compare with the direction within the master plan, the spatial development orientation direction within the master plan. Here's you can see there's some kind of interesting finding, not very related to the presentation. For example, population within the city center decrease, and population, again, in the suburban area increased strongly. Right? And here's more detailed analysis. We not only analyze the population distribution by distance, but we analyze by direction as well. And we can see some interesting facts that will reveal some big gap of spatial urban planning in Ho Chi Minh City. From this, we can easily recognize some main kind of direction that attract more citizens or new citizens rather than some other direction. And typically, it is a real development direction of the city. And let us compare with the expected spatial direction within the spatial plan, the spatial master plan that I just introduced with you. Here, we have an old master plan that was approved in 1998, and we have an existing master plan that was approved about 10 years ago. And within the master plan, it is clearly specify the expected spatial direction that the city should develop. For example, the old master plan. And when we compare with the actual development direction based on the number of population and population growth, population density, we see that a big gap regarding the direction. We want, or the city authority want, or the expert want that the city should develop toward, for example, the eastern part. But in fact, because of market performance, living conditions, land division, self-housing construction, the actual development direction of Ho Chi Minh City during last 2 decades is not a little, but totally different compared with what we expect. And it costs a lot of practical things, because when you prepare a master plan like this and you have a lot of investment to the eastern part, for example, right? We have developed the eastern city up to now. But how to attract more citizens to this area will be a big question. So it is a big gap identified here. But also, when I read through the master plan, have the big report for the master plan of Ho Chi Minh City, there's some other gap as well. Some other gap identified as well. I forgot to mention that it is a result coming from the assessment on urban form evolution of Ho Chi Minh City, that the group of Vietnamese German university was sized to analyze the transformation of the city from a spatial point of view. When we read through the report of, I don't remember exactly, 300-400 pages, we see that there's no mention about urban redevelopment strategy within the existing master plan. We are preparing for the whole development during the next 20 years, but there's no clear mentioning of urban redevelopment. But typically, because of the need from the market, from the reality, it is happening without any strategic guidance. Right? Urban redevelopment happen, but because of the individual project or sectoral program, housing program, for example, urban upgrading or upgrading the old condominium building or something like this. We have a very limited planning parameter. Limited, it means that within the city center, you cannot build a very high density development because of the zoning plan within the city center. And because of this, because of the limited parameter, you cannot encourage for the private sector investment to join in, especially when they join into some very complicated project like the upgrading of the old apartment building in the city center. It is really delayed. There's a big lack of integrated planning. I realize the approach, the presentation from here is so that we need integrated planning at a kind of micro level when we have to prepare kind of a comprehensive and integrated plan for development of one project. But at a city level, we should also have such mindset, preparing the master plan of the city, taking into account different sectoral requirements, transportation planning, housing planning, land use planning, financial resource, and action plan toward the implementation of the master plan. We don't have at this moment. And I hope that we can change it in the next few years. I'm not sure. We don't have extra finding. We don't have a legal framework that can support for land value capture tool. If you are working at a private developer, or if you are working at a kind of the authority, within the authority, land value capture tool is very helpful for urban regeneration or urban redevelopment project. But when we carry out the analysis regarding the existing legal framework, not only in Ho Chi Minh City but at national level, we see that the existing framework is not supportive. Therefore, it's not really attractive for urban redevelopment or compact city development. And differently, we have a very supportive policy for greenfield development. The land use plan, the master plan focus on and allows for a massive development of greenfield area everywhere, not only in Ho Chi Minh City, it's everywhere in Vietnam. And I think that most of the projects of our colleagues here focusing on greenfield development. If you work on urban project, of course, how individual house project may be different, but urban development project, I believe that maybe 80 or even more of your work focus on greenfield development. It is a fact that we cannot deny, right? So it is a very big challenge. But we can recognize that there's some big opportunity or a very promising future for urban redevelopment in Ho Chi Minh City toward a more compact city, compact, livable, sustainable development. We have more than 1,000 old apartment buildings, and some hundred of them have a very bad quality right now and need to be upgraded. But as I just mentioned, it's very delayed. Only a few buildings that were successfully renovated and are redeveloped. The other, we have a lot of issues. But still, it is the area of opportunity for investment. We have more than 400 industrial locations, kind of small-scale industrial locations within the city center. That's because of the environmental reason. We need to relocate it into the other area. And the existing land area, the brownfield area, should be a very big opportunity for investment for urban development. We also have an urban upgrading program. For example, you might know about the urban upgrading along the canal of the city with more than 30,000 of households living nearby the so-called slum area along the canal of the city. And I don't remember from which presentation, Pedro, right? About the metro line system. We have 8 metro line to be built, to be operated in the next, hopefully, 20-25 years. And in planning field, we have a concept of transit-oriented development or integrated planning between spatial planning and transportation planning. We have 8 metro lines and more than 100 stations. And typically, within this 100 stations, if we have a good preparation for transit-oriented development strategy, we should start right now. Then we have an opportunity for developing toward compact city urban redevelopment in surrounding area of the station, about radius of 500 meters, for example, walking distance to the station. And it is a very big opportunity. So we already identified the gap, the challenge of development, and we already identified the potentiality. What can we do from a strategic point of view for the kind of the master plan development of the city in the near future? Very generally, we should really have the urban redevelopment strategy. And because the city is working to adjust or to update the master plan, it should be included within the updated master plan. Because only with urban redevelopment strategy, then the city can become more livable, more sustainable. And still, why I have such statement? Because sometimes there's kind of discussion to say that if we develop for compact city or higher density development, so we cannot have a sustainable neighborhood or livable neighborhood. It's not the case. If we prepare right from the beginning, then we can still do this. We should change our approach of planning from the authority perspective, but from the professional perspective. That planning or urban planning should be considered as a development control tool rather than a strategic development tool rather than the construction, the management tool for construction project. It is totally wrong mindset and approach. And it is typically right now happen based on the existing legal framework of Vietnam. We should also have an integrated planning, housing, transport, land use, financial, environmental, and climate change integrated into the master plan. And a really serious and detailed preparation for transport-oriented development strategy in Ho Chi Minh City in the upcoming year. Otherwise, we will miss the chance. Regarding the urban redevelopment strategy, we should develop a detailed guideline for the pilot implementation of urban redevelopment and with innovative application of different land value capture tools. It will be another thing. A concrete recommendation or proposition is that we should regulate between the ratio of new development and urban renewal. I see that in some, especially developed country and city, we have a ratio saying that, for example, in London, that they cannot develop more than 30% of new housing construction in London in a greenfield area. They should focus first on brownfield area or urban redevelopment, something like this. If we can regulate it, and of course, if we can strictly follow this regulation, then it will be a good starting point. And actually, we introduced it into the housing development program of Ho Chi Minh City that was approved. But so far, when I observe, it is not really respect and follow. So it is some thought from my side, some sharing from my side, and I hope that you can share with me some viewpoint. Let me, before stopping my presentation, can you just please do a small exercise with me? That can you come to the menti.com and enter the code, and can you share with me and then with us, with all of us, the from your perspective, what are the challenges of urban planning in Ho Chi Minh City in particular, and what are the challenges of urban planning system in Vietnam in general? Spend 2 minutes, please. Can you come to menti.com? And then I will show the result. You can even observe the outcome immediately. Thank you very much.
If I want to build a house with the greenery design like your house, Sky House, how much money should I prepare for the design fee and the build-up cost?
What do you mean? The cost for a house in general construction cost?
Your house, Sky House. I saw it
Okay.
on the architecture newspaper. They did
$400,000 US dollar for
for
construction.
40,000.
400.
400,000.
Yes.
Okay. And the design fee should be 4,000 something.
What?
The design fee.
Design fee?
Free.
Uh,
Yeah, right.
It's free
Okay.
for 4 years.
Okay. Thank you.
4 years work.
I can speak loud enough. It's not really a question, but it's more like something that I've noticed in the presentations, and maybe I'd like your point of view on this, because I see kind of two two strategies or two groups between the first two presentations and the last two presentations. And the first two presentations, and maybe it's a matter of scale because it's smaller scale, but you tended to make a very strong opposition between city and like the built environment and the natural environment. And maybe I'm wrong, but you tend to oppose these two words in saying like we should be more green, less gray, or have this big duality between built and natural, whether the last two presentations I thought were much more trying to find a balance between the two and an integration between the city and not really seeing necessarily the city as a bad thing or something you want to hide or something you don't want to see, but how we can work with the city and what we already have and how we can develop the city in a different way. And maybe the reason why, like the last presentation talked a lot about the problems in the master planning and how is the master plan made actually, and how basically by the time you finish the master plan it's already too late to be implemented and you need to start making another master plan for the next 20 years. So what would be maybe the strategies were interesting, but they are still in the way things are done. Like we need a master plan and then we need to follow the master plan, but you also showed that people don't really follow the master plan. So what would be your incentives or different way of working with the people that actually make the master plan to have the master plan followed?
Okay. On me, right? Okay, maybe I will start, but because of the time limitation, I could not introduce in detail the content and the different gap of the master plan. It is just something, but we also have another gap within the master plan. As master plan is a strategic document, right? But within this strategic document, we don't have a very concrete action plan toward the master plan. Because we can have that you have target, you have a kind of the final outcome that you expect. Typically, you should prepare different action towards this, right? But within our existing document, a master plan, we don't have this, and therefore we don't know kind of step by step implementation of master plan, and there kind of big mismatch between the reality and the expectation because of the big gap of the time, big gap of the capacity. What I just mentioned is that it is not kind of people don't follow the direction of master plan, but they don't follow kind of the other regulation related to the implementation of master plan. It is another thing. Just because that we don't have a clear roadmap and action plan toward a kind of the big vision after a certain year. And that's why when we have carry out the assessment, we find out that it will be a big gap or something like this. And of course, and also something that I want to say that reading the implementation of the existing legal framework in Vietnam, mostly we are building and completing the legal framework. It means that the legal framework seems to be more comprehensive, but but sometimes people can find out a way by informally or sometimes formally bypass the regulation, and that's why something happen in reality is not as expected as well, right? Because of the different kind group interest of different group that can bypass some regulation as well. But it is another topic of today, I think so.
Are you consulted in the master plan making decisions? Who
not
makes
really.
the master plan?
I'm working as an advisor for DPA, but not consultant. Advisor is mean carry out the assessment and contribute to expectedly and hopefully kind of the review of the preparation of the master plan. But I'm not sure because they are still at the very first step, preparing the term of reference, something like this. But I contribute a little bit for the updated master plan.
Do you know if in this master plan, like also, like who is consulted? Is it only architects or is it only urban planners? Or
there will be kind of international goal for competition or something like this, or bidding or tendering process.
Yeah, because this is for the actual drawing of the plan, but this misses out all the part, I think, that is the regulations and the roadmap. And usually when you make a bidding for a master plan, architects and urban planners will send a lot of very good drawings and very nice ideas, but they'll never do the roadmap and they'll never do
it is something that I want to change as well. Yeah, and I said to the authority already. It means that our group, working group, already talked to the authority that. But you know why? Because it's existing legal framework requiring kind of a final outcome for preparation of master plan. They focusing only on the map and a very summarized document, kind of the official outcome, and there's no detail requirement. And that's why we still consider, sorry, that we have a lot of architect and landscape here, that a master plan is another kind of work for architect only with a map and drawing, but not really a strategic document. But the map can only show the final expectation, right? But the roadmap to this very long-term final expectation is something that it is a big gap within the existing regulation in Vietnam right now. We can change, and we should change, and we can change, and we are changing a little bit.
I have one question for maybe more a man, Pedro. My feeling is that recently, I'm talking more here in terms of green, in terms of design, and not so much about sustainability. But recently, in the last years, it's like the how to make the buildings the craziest, the more fantastic, the more show off, and people, and personally this is what I feel as an architect, is we are a bit tired of this. And the architecture is a bit tired of all these competition for the craziest you have to do. And my feeling is that the green helps to go aside of this and takes the lead on the architecture. The architecture tends to disappear a bit. This is what I see also in your, I mean, the green aspect of some of your projects really takes the lead, and the architecture disappears in profit of the green. And I think that's a solution that is coming more and more, and we also applied that in some of our projects, but I clearly see this. It's more a question for an architect using landscape, but it's also for a landscaper using architecture.
Well, very interesting question. You know, you're working on a master plan scale. I never have any chance even look at it, and surprisingly today, I had a chance to listen what you're doing. And as the small studio firm like me, I had a lot of wish for how to see our urban in general in the future. So we only see day by day like more and more boom, 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 boom buildings, and which is not so right compared with what it should be in terms of density, in terms of ratio, building ratio, in terms of when you see the green in master plan drawings, but actual implementation step, which is can be completely changed. Where's the green park for the last chance you see, and it might be disappear tomorrow. So, to be honest to speak, like, what can I do? I had the studio. Maybe my project is very small, but the big project we did a lot project. But it is same what we see everywhere on the street today, right? So no, as an architect, we had really no chance to do public project. I know it's not going to be right at the end. So what else can we do in Vietnam? Only residential, resort, some private sector project. In a small scale, might be I hope we're going to do something right. And what my architecture today, although very small scale project, but I bring the big message to society. We need the balance between open space and actual living. Because when you talk about the house, the people in Vietnamese in Saigon, I see the more money you make, the bigger the house you want to be. But you don't worry about the setback. You do a lot of tricks for with the authority, with the neighbors, and to make as long as to make your house bigger. So instead of to make it bigger, why don't you think to make only 50%? And for the rest, you live in the much better condition with the open space. And where is the park today in our city, where you see a lot of alleys, no open spaces, let's say. It's actual today, what we see, right? So what else for us as an architect, we can do something before it's too late. So that's why I did a little bit of, and then if you talk about green or biophilic design, it doesn't matter, but at least we can use some natural material, green, water, natural ventilation. Don't forget, my house had the green certificate, by the way, to start. And to see, it's not my intention to get the green certificate, but I double check after I design, and I check I'm going the right direction. So, well, that's what I thought. That's what I did. And I will do anyway. So I try as much as I can, and in different way, different scale, and I mean something to start. Sorry.
May I just continue this question? But it seems that you still have a chance to work with some project owner that understand the issue and agree with the approach, right?
No.
I heard.
Sorry.
Because I heard from some other architects sharing that when they want to introduce some kind of new concept to green development or something like this, the project owner and this individual housing owner, they just don't care about it. And what happened if you?
Well, actually, when you talk about residential project, just an idea,
yes.
They come to me from the sales person to talk, like how I'm gonna maximize GFA, how I'm gonna maximize the ratio, density, instead of, and here and there a little bit, I wanna this style for architecture. They never really cares about how my end user gonna live in the future, and as much as marketing thing as possible. So, profit. Sorry to say. And we see also, as an architect, see the profit in different way as well, in terms of something physically you see in terms of number, and something we don't see it yet, right? So that's what I'm saying. But difficult, and very challenging.
Okay.
Unless there are implementation, there are rule by authority. I mean,
They have to follow.
cooperate together and say, okay, we have to do something, this and this and this. If you want to build 1 more square meter for a green roof, how much more GFA your buildings can be increasing? So that it has to be. Sorry.
So we have at least I guess when we start studying that, we have the wrongful idea that the city is made by designers. But actually, is not, we are very little part of it, and we do what we can. So if I have a slide, those famous expectation reality, I had that first one that I spoke about transport, the city green, and we have, but actually the reality is the only public space that I have done in all these years in Vietnam is the one that I did, the playtime, that is basically, and was allowed to me to do a public space for 1 day. 6 p.m. was already, look, you need to remember. So I think I at the other hand, looking to the positive side, and was a matter of that first slide that I show of the contrast of the society that we used to live. I see that we value what we don't have. This is global. We value what we don't have, and since we have this lack of green spaces, daily I see even the private sector asking more and more, like to have more greenery, because they know that they sell as well. For example, if you look District 1, the areas of the city that have the highest value in terms of property, they are the ones that are greenest as well. So the speed that's a problem. I know that this will come, and the speed and the cost of these changes will be a problem. But but for sure, this will come after all. You know, quality of air, all these issues, and I think this will unite, as the point that Gregoire was saying, that I think this green will unite all of us, because it's everything that is around us. So that's it.
Okay, so I have 2 questions. One is for Mr. Mann, the other one is for Mr. San. Sorry. So for Mr. Mann, if I understood well, when you were presenting your home, the space on the rooftop, you were speaking about before. I understand in traditional architecture in Vietnam, you could see more or less what was happening outside, and that people from outside more or less could share your garden, let's say, view, or your house until a certain point view with them. So my question for you was like, why do you think that this has changed, especially in the urban environment? And do you think that we can bring this part of your cultural heritage somehow back? Also speaking about when you were showing the section of the project in District 3 that I think is touching that topic as well. And then my other question for Mr. San is related actually to cultural heritage. When you were finishing your presentation, you were foreseeing, like in the best case, that the city should be more contained into the brown field, right? My question is more related to cultural heritage. How do you think, how is this working right now? Because I don't know very well. And do you think it will be effective, or they will need to implement some additional procedures to keep the identity, let's say, of the cities in Vietnam? Yeah.
Well, That's very interesting question. Thank you. You know, I don't want to be defense traditional. I respect the traditional, but I want to see traditional in a different way. So, in Vietnam, traditional, you have hierarchies, many different levels in the past, and normally they put the altar in the enclosed room. So only depends on the person. So they come maybe twice every day, or sometimes 10 days one time. Depends on the person. And I see they belong something. Then before you come to the altar, you have to dress well and things. And I find that's a bit the distance between the past and the present. So when I make the roof, green roof for my family use for vegetation, I mean to cool down underneath for a purpose. And then I think, why don't we think different way? Like the people passing every day. So by the time, by passing, and you will connect the present and the past connected. Very simple, very relaxing ways. You don't have to be formal. And you see, like the in the family, we have some pictures to put just one same levels, and to see that's the present, but the past and the present meet the present. So we feel them they with us and they still alive. Then it's the good thing to interact it between by having vegetation garden at the rooftop.
Thank you for the question. Regarding urban heritage conservation, I agree that it should be a part of urban redevelopment opportunity, but because of the nature of conservation, so typically we cannot have a higher density development or kind of mixed use. It means that put more activity except kind of tourism activity, but kind of commercial and industrial whatever activity, office activity into the area of urban heritage. So I do not mention here, but I totally agree with you that the urban heritage should be kind of a main component of whatever master plan or the strategy of urban development everywhere, in order that the city can create itself the urban identity, the identity physically and kind of intangibly or culturally as well. So it is the first answer, but also I want to have additional comment, not really answer. But I consider, from my point of view, I consider that the city is a location, very dynamic location and context, that it will be we always have an evolutionary transformation of the city. It means that what we build today, if we have a good preparation, good building, good plan, good concept, it can become urban heritage in the next 2, 3, 4 generations. So if we can have a such mindset in mind, that whenever you develop the architect, the developer, the project owner, city authority, of course, develop something right now, have in mind that they will develop something that will be worth to become urban heritage in the future. Then it will be okay that the city will enrich itself, the urban identity, in some few generations. It is just an additional thought regarding urban heritage perspective.
Yeah, but out of maybe my own lack of knowledge about the situation in Ho Chi Minh City, for example, do you think that right now there is a strong or or well-connected, well-built body of regulation to protect cultural heritage, or?
We have a too complicated system. Sometimes it's too easy, sometimes it's too complicated. You know, right? Sometimes it's too easy to bypass kind of this regulation regarding urban heritage conservation. The villa system, the villa network in the city center, you can see that there's some villa that is well maintained, well conserved, but some other villas they just destroy it easily, even that it is some kind of heritage already. So I cannot just say yes or no, but depend case by case. But it is just another confirmation that the existing regulation in Vietnam is, we have somehow, but we still have some strategy or a way to bypass it. It is something that we need to investigate further and have a further discussion on this. Thank you.
May I have a question or a thought I want to share with you, Hien?
Yeah.
I mean, your presentation gives a lot of hope. I mean, we have some developers who have some consciousness. Integrate sustainable notions. But still, we don't have a lot of these people, and even you struggle with the market, and how will you really be able to implement this? And me, I'm quite persuaded that it cannot come from the private sector, it has to come from the authorities, from the government. And that we need to implement laws in the government, maybe with incentive to the owner who will apply them, to develop those kind of projects. Like I know, I'm from Switzerland, I know in Switzerland when we started to implement it was called Minergie, but that was the LEED certificate. When you were applying this, you could build 10% more GFA. And then everyone started building Minergie LEED certification. And maybe, I don't know, I'm sure there are a lot of ways to improve this, to implement this, maybe impose some competitions on some land to develop. Or don't you think it's would be a more efficient way for sure? No?
Yes. No, that's why I have a slide on lack of incentives, because actually, like the plastic problems, it has to come from all sides, really. It comes from the private sector, it comes from the customer demand, and it also comes from the government support policy or restriction, so to speak. So the pressure has to come from all sides for the subject to really leap to the next level. In my perspective, and that's why I think that's why the German and some other European governments have tried to pour in money that facilitating the sustainable development. But they are super early. They involve us, but they are in the feasibility stage. So I have no idea if it's going to go somewhere, but it's along the line of creating an ecosystem in which they providing financing incentives to the developer to develop, but also for the buyers to buy a sustainable product so that they get a lower rate of financing. So, but you're right, like right now there's no such thing in place. So we do feel like we need an ecosystem in which then the government will listen and then give us some, incentives to make this happen easier and faster. But, yeah.
Stop being more architects in the government.
That too. An urban planner, also important. Right.
Maybe a last question after we can continue discussing upstairs, right? At least we can share a drink, and whether anyone wants to ask one more question. So, if it's not the case, I suggest we move up. And thank you really, all of you, for all these nice lectures.